When the review embargo lifted on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it generated some juicy headlines as one of the most critically panned entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It can be liberating to watch a movie that's been eviscerated by critics, because it means you go in with low expectations and you might be pleasantly surprised. That was my experience with Quantumania. When I went to watch it on opening weekend, just as it was about to start and the Marvel Studios logo kicked in, I overheard a little boy behind me say, "Let's get this party started." And it reminded me that's who these movies are for. Marvel didn't make Ant-Man 3 for cynical critics or snobby fanboys with impossibly high standards. It exists for kids like him. And then when the movie was over, I heard that same kid's dad ask him what he thought of it, and he said, "It was okay-ish." And honestly, that's a pretty astute assessment of this movie. Okay-ish. Based on the harshness of the reviews, you'd think Quantumania was offensively bad, like Troll 2 or Dirty Grandpa, and it's nowhere near that bad. Don't get me wrong, it's not a great movie. It's not even really that good of a movie. But it's not terrible, it's not unwatchable, it's okay-ish. I had a really fun time with it. There are much worse ways to spend a couple of hours than watching Paul Rudd dodge ray guns and Michael Douglas talking to giant super-intelligent ants. Ant-Man and the Wasp's latest adventure is no better or worse than the average MCU movie. At this point, you know what you're getting. Its first act jumps into the action nice and early, its second act gets bogged down in too much plot and exposition, and its third act culminates in a big, messy final battle that's heavy on spectacle and light on emotional engagement. That's a standard Marvel movie if I ever saw one. I think critics are only being particularly tough on this one because they finally reached their breaking point after reviewing the same movie 31 times. One area in which Quantumania succeeds where most Marvel movies fail is in its villain. The Ant-Man threequel had the daunting task of setting up the MCU's next Thanos-sized big bad, the formidable Kang the Conqueror, and it does so ably by allowing a generous amount of screen time to the great Jonathan Majors. After his debut as He Who Remains in Loki, this is Majors' proper introduction as Kang, and he knocks it out of the park. In a franchise full of one-dimensional baddies, Majors' Kang is reassuringly three-dimensional. He's genuinely menacing, he poses a palpable threat to the heroes. He's a classic example of a bad guy who thinks he's the good guy, his hubris is his own undoing, and he's just the right amount of vulnerable, where he's human but not so human that you start to empathize with him and root for him. The fact that this is just the beginning of Kang's massive MCU arc creates a bit of a problem for the story at hand, because it means there's no chance for closure. Quantumania has to resolve its conflict without killing the villain, and it doesn't get around that in a very creative way. It tries to have its cake and eat it too. Ant-Man and the Wasp do defeat Kang, but the victory is meaningless because you know it won't stick. Quantumania often feels more like an episode of television than a movie. The more Marvel movies feel like a piece of a larger puzzle, the more they feel like a disposable chunk of Adventure of the Week television. It has an A plot and a B plot juggling the main cast, and despite the vastness of its quantum setting, the spaces often feel limited and small. Darren Aronofsky managed to do more with Charlie's living room in The Whale than Peyton Reed does with the universe outside time and space in Quantumania. Aside from the bookends set on Earth, almost every frame in Ant-Man 3 seems to be entirely made of CGI except for the actors' faces. And the producers used ILM's stagecraft technology, which is basically a soundstage surrounded by big high-def TV screens. It allows the actors to see the visual effects they're reacting to, but it also restricts where the camera can go. There are glimmers of greatness when Quantumania gets into a really fun sequence, like Scott splitting into dozens of different versions of himself in the Probability Storm. This scene strikes the perfect balance of heart and humor. They all unite over their love of Cassie and climb on top of each other like actual ants so the real Ant-Man can save her. But there are only a couple of sequences that strike the balance like this. The majority of the film's action is uninspired. People have been shitting on the MODOK CGI, but this was always going to be a difficult character to translate into live action. It was a neat idea to have MODOK be the quantum form of Darren Cross from the first movie, and he has some really funny moments in the film, but his redemption arc is rushed and unearned. He's introduced as a killing machine with no remorse, then turns into a vulnerable human being at the drop of a dime. He suddenly decides to become a hero just because Cassie tells him not to be a dick. It's really lazy writing.
It's never too late to stop being a dick.
I am not a dick!
Jeff Loveness's script works best when it leans into the weirdness. Loveness is one of many Rick and Morty writers to work for Marvel Studios, but Quantumania is the first time some of that Rick and Mortiness has really rubbed off on the MCU. The talking broccoli, and the slime guy obsessed with Scott's holes, and the telepath who wishes he wasn't exposed to people's disgusting thoughts, all feel like they were ripped straight from a Rick and Morty episode. As a screenplay, a 3-act narrative with character arcs to pay off, it's not that great. It's more interested in serving the needs of the plot than the needs of the characters. There's no reason for Janet to keep so many secrets from her family about her time in the quantum realm, and dole the information out in such small segments throughout the film, besides not wanting to burden the audience with too much exposition at a given time. Michelle Pfeiffer is forced to spend most of the movie being aloof about stuff Janet should have revealed years ago. She really gets to shine opposite Majors, in the flashback sequences to their dysfunctional friendship-turned-rivalry. In its marketing, Quantumania set itself up to be an uncharacteristically dark Ant-Man film. Based on Scott's line about how he doesn't have to beat Kang if they both lose,
I don't have to win. We both just have to lose.
there was a prevalent fan theory that Kang would kill Scott in Quantumania. It was primed to be a lot grimmer and scarier than its predecessors, but it doesn't commit to the darkness. It's like Thor: Love and Thunder. It sets out to be much darker than the last movie, but still wants to be just as silly, and as a result the tone is very disjointed. One minute Scott is terrified that his daughter will be tortured to death in front of him. The next, Michael Douglas is steering a spaceship by sticking his hands in a couple of slugs. Overall, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania provides enough entertainment to be worth the price of admission. It doesn't have an even pace, it doesn't strike a consistent tone, and it doesn't transcend beyond standard blockbuster entertainment. But if you want something transcendent and challenging and thought-provoking, maybe don't look for it in a Marvel movie.
How many holes do you have?
He has 7 holes.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.